Are you recording?
Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Guratmeti Mochi Veda Vibhagine Vyomabda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sava Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satiguru Pranatoshimaham Om Shanti 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 Om Namaste. Welcome. Welcome, my dear friends. Satsang Tripura, Vedanta, verse 100. Such is the power called Maya, capable of accomplishing the impossible and remaining undefiled, notwithstanding its majesty and diversity, manifest as phenomenon resembling, similar to a mirror, producing its image. Such is the power called Maya, capable of accomplishing, remaining undefiled, notwithstanding her manifest diversity as phenomenon, resembling as a mirror. So she is the eternal, single, unbroken I-ness, running through all manifestation. You see here, the author here again collapse Maya in Tripura, collapse Maya in Brahman, because it talks about the power of Maya, but maybe in the previous verse it was referring to consciousness through a certain power. Consciousness is self-sufficient and self-contained, unbroken, is the one single nature, essential beingness. And then we had the example in the previous verse of the fire having two other features, which is light and heat. And we can analyze these features separately in practical life. So we see consciousness. There's one single essential Satchitananda. And then it says, such is the power of called Maya. So consciousness is one without a second, but Maya, such is the power called Maya, capable of accomplishing the impossible and remaining undefiled, notwithstanding her manifested diversity as phenomenon resembling images on a mirror. So what is the meaning of this sentence? We talk about the power of Maya. It produces the impossible and remaining undefiled, notwithstanding her manifest diversity. What is the meaning of notwithstanding? I don't understand quite well this word.
Notwithstanding.
Here it's meaning, I think, despite manifesting as diversity.
Yes.
Or even though it manifests as diversity.
Okay. So it's talking about Maya remaining undefiled in spite of producing this phenomenal universe, just like image on a mirror. And then in the very end, thank you, Mark. And then in the very end, it goes back to call Tripura. She is the eternal, single, unbroken I-ness running through all manifestations. So, okay, now it's not collapsing really Maya. It's just point to the fact that Maya, the greatest trickist or illusionist, produce diversity just like images in a mirror. But Tripura, which is consciousness of Brahman, is one single, unbroken existence, einence, eternal, beyond time, and the substratum of all universe, all manifestations, running through, meaning to say, is accommodating or pervading everything, making everything possible to emerge through the power of Maya. So no, he was not really collapsing Maya into consciousness, into Brahman. The following verse is: the seeming breaks in the continuum are said to be the not self. The same as ignorance. So not self, we could say it is ignorance. Insentience or void. So we call this insentient objects or beings, you know, creatures, inert creatures or beings. Yeah, we call them ignorant beings. Yeah? The insentience or the void. Nature, non-existence of things, space, darkness, or the first step in creation, all of which represent nothing but the first scission in pure intelligence. So we spoke a little bit about that. We stopped last class at this paragraph, okay? And I got some help from you guys. I think Mark said something that was to the point or close to the point. So appears that consciousness is broken up or fragmented by objects, you know, the same way the space is fragmented by parts, in a way that there are spaces, within the part. Lynn, I'm going to mute you, but feel free to open your mic every time you want to speak. So what did you say, Mark? What was your take? Or either you or Lynn last time? I was seeing this, the first scission in pure consciousness as the first modification in consciousness, in awareness, which would be Maya or the macrocosmic. Now, Maya is also a lot of the times synonymous of the macrocosm causal body, because it has everything in potential. So ignorance will condition us to believe that consciousness is being obstructed by objects. Therefore, we want to destroy or remove the world of objects so that we can get consciousness. This is ignorance. So there are breaks in thoughts and objects in my mind that prevents me from realizing the continuum of non-dual consciousness, the non-dual self. So this is ignorance, which seems to be suggested synonymous of insentience, void, the non-existence of things, space, darkness. So we don't need to go into all these synonymous as presented here, which represent nothing but the first modification in pure consciousness. I remember I think Mark or Lynn said something. Can you remember what you said?
I did say something. I can't remember exactly what I said now.
Well, you may say it better now.
I may do, yeah, or may not.
Okay. Okay, the following verse, the passage. you are going to say?
I was going to say, this is almost like he's talking about pure Maya, the first upadhi of Maya, without actual any objects as such, just pure Maya, it seems to me he's talking of.
Yeah, when he brings about the void, non-existence of things, yeah, we are talking about and Maya in repose, okay? Maya as the macrocosm in which there are no existing things, yeah? It's just the void, darkness, space, yes. So which is the first modification of consciousness, which is the macrocosm causal body, which is a lot of the times is presented as Maya, you understand? Everything is contained in the macrocosm causal body as unmanifest creation, unmanifest phenomenon. And that is the first scission or modification in the pure consciousness. The passage from the infinite absolute to a limited nature is influenced by Maya, and the transition is called space. So these are all very subtle and difficult verse to be interpreted. So we have the absolute, which is the unmanifest consciousness. And then consciousness or Tripura has a certain power that is said to be not really integral part of consciousness, because consciousness is a partless, non-dual whole. But it's something associated to consciousness, such as a talent is associated to a Jiva-Atma, a potential. So the passage from the infinite Brahman, non-manifest, the absolute to the limited nature called the universe, limited nature, is influenced or produced by Maya. And the transition is called the space. So the space, I think, is what he was saying, the first scission in pure consciousness, which is the macrocosmic universe, causal universe, in which there is nothing, but there is potential for everything. And this macrocosmic universe, causal universe, is here, is compared to space as a transition between Brahman and the manifest, subtle, and physical universe. There is an intermediary stage in which Maya is there producing space, which could be the pure space without the manifestation of the universe, which goes again back to the macrocosmic causal body of the universe. So that is the transition. We need the causal body of the universe, but this is, as yet, is indistinguishable from the self, only to the non-development or absence of the ego, which is the seed of the cycles that burst in there. This is very nice. So it's saying that this Maya, or this macrocosmic causal body, or the pralaya periods in which everything is called back into, as the big tree is pulled back to its seed potential existence. So the universe goes back to the unmanifest, which means the potential seed of the universe, which is Maya. It says that this Maya is as yet indistinguishable from the self. You cannot make up what is Brahman and what is Maya. That's why sometimes Maya is somehow said to be consciousness, although we have to come back and say consciousness is not Maya. But it's so close, the macrocosm is so close to the self, yeah? And it appears as Maya, which is, in analogy, is space. It's a transitional stage in which the universe appears as space with the potential for all its namarupas and knowledge and Ishvara. So, but this Maya is yet indistinguishable from Brahman, the self, owing to the no development, or in another word, owing to the absence of the ego. So, consciousness appears as distinguished or different from Brahman only when the ego emerges. As long as there is no ego, because everything is there into the macrocosmic level, so there is no question of saying that no, this is different from the self. So the only one who established that I am different from the self is the Jivatma, under the spell of the ignorance. Aham, Boris me, né? Eu sou o corpo-mente. So, owing to the non-development of the ego, or the absence of the ego, so we can say that Maya is indistinguished from the self, indistinguishable from the self. Anything from you guys on this verse? As we hear again and again, the whole universe is projected for the Jiva Atmas in a way that it can play hide and seek, or be lost in the labyrinth of the universe, and then trying to find its true nature, identity, which produce cycles and more cycles of births and deaths. Yeah? So, and then from the standpoint of the ego, the universe is different from the self. But if we remove the Jivatma, if we go back to the state of macrocosmic causal body, in which there is only space with potential for the ego, potential for all objects in the universe, including the sentient human jivas, in which the ego appears. If we go back to our causal body, okay, our causal condition, so there is no ego, there is no question whether the universe exists or not exists, and much less of equating the universe as Brahman. None of that appears. What appears when the ego comes, is that mistakenly takes the universe to be real and distinguished from the creator and from the self, from Brahman. Therefore, Maya is something so close to Brahman that cannot be distinguished from Brahman at that level of pure space. The self is, Brahman is the space of the space. And the space, the macrocosm, is so, as a phenomenon, is the closest modification to consciousness, in which Maya is already producing the universe, but without manifesting it. It's very, it's mind, how you say? Mind-boggling, or something like that. Diversity is visible only in space. We need space first. We need the macrocosmic space of Maya. And this space is the self, as it was being pointed to in the verse 105. Diversity is visible only in space. And this space is the self, which in turn projects it at the moment when differentiation starts. So diversity is visible in space, and this space is the self, which in turn projects diversity at the moment when differentiation starts, although it is not then clear, because it's still on the macrocosm causal body, causal universe. It's there, the potential for differentiation and diversity is there, but it's not clear. Rama, look within. What you perceive as space within is the expanse wherein all creatures exist, and it forms their self or consciousness. It's very profound, all of that. So, I mean, we go into the nature of space, the nature of the very fabric of the universe, which is the causal body of the universe, or Maya, or the fundamental prakriti of the universe, which is here, is being presented in analogy as space, the space of the space, I would say. What you perceive as space within yourself, the empty space, no thoughts are there, no emotion, there is nothing, is the expanse wherein all creatures exist. So that is consciousness. So again, it's bringing and associating those states, that mental states in which there is nothing to be witnessed interiorly, I mean, you're just there in a deep meditation. The space within is just consciousness in which all creatures exist and forms their self or consciousness. So it's trying to help Parasurama to understand that profound silence, that profound deep space of nothingness or void, is the self, and everything is brought up from that space, okay? Because that space is further more being equated as Maya, the seed, potential seed of the universe, in which there is nothing, but from one moment to another, everything comes into existence. Everything, the inert universe and the sentient creatures, they are formed in this space, which is the self or consciousness. What they look upon as space is yourself. All these creatures look into space, the inner space, which is more symbolic of consciousness, okay? Because it's the inner space, let's say. What is the difference between the inner space and the outer space? Help me out.
I think there was a analogy of pot space, and when you break the pot, there's no difference.
Yeah. Good reminder. So the inner space could be associated to the analogy of the space within a pot, which is equal to the space outside. But in the practical level of Jiva-Atma's experience, we can see the space outside, but we never see the space really deprived of objects, because if you don't see anything, you'll see the sky. There is always something in there. But the inner space is a space in which there are no thoughts. No, it's a samadhi state in which you experience the void or the space, as they are putting here, the space. So this space this emptiness, this void that can be experienced in deep meditation is the source from where all creatures appear, expanse. And it forms their self and consciousness. All creatures, even their minds, it forms their self and consciousness. Yeah, so every creature, sentient being owns its conscious existence through this space, which is being equated as Brahman or consciousness. Sorry. What they look upon as a space is yourself. The creatures are looking into space, but it is the self. Thus, the self is one in one, is space in another, and vice versa. Then that passage becomes even a little bit more difficult today to interpret. We are looking at space, let's say the space we seem to try to make sense of this passage here. So this space is the self from where the universe of sentient beings come, developing self-consciousness. Thus the self in one is space in another, and vice versa. He's equating the space with self. And the creatures, what is the self for one person is space in another. And what is space into another is the self. So either way, either you look at the self is the space, you can recognize it as the space, or if you look into space, you better recognize that that is the self. Anything from you guys? The same thing cannot differ in its nature, space and the self. Therefore, there is no difference between the space and self. There is no difference between Maya and the self, which is full and perfect bliss consciousness. Satchitananda. However, space implies sections. Each section of intelligence is called mind. So now he brings the analogy of the space in reference to the self and says that this space implies sections in which space are contained. Space is consciousness. So, and then if we take the Jiva Atmas coming into the party, and then we experience individual consciousness or individual space. Each section is of this intelligence is called the mind. So the individual mind is this space contained within a body-mind complex and defines itself as the mind or the ego, which appears as individual consciousness. But can this individual consciousness, this individual space, be different from the self if all of them resolves themselves into Maya or space? And we have established that space is undistinguishable from the self. We all come from that space, and the space implies the development of diversities and pluralities of microspaces, microselves, and these microselves is called Maya, it's called minds, several minds, Jivatma. But can it be different from the self? Pure intelligence contaminated with inanimate excrescence is called jiva, or the individual, whose faculty for discrimination is consistent with its self-imposed limitations, and it's called mind. Let's see if we become smarter here as we go. Pure intelligence, contaminated with inanimate excrescence. What is the meaning of this word now, excrescence?
It's like an outgrowth,
Outgrowth.
something like if you have a mole on your skin or something, but it's an outgrowth.
Okay. Pure intelligence contaminated with inanimate excrescence is called jiva, or the individual. Another analogy that I never heard before. Holds faculty for discriminations is consistent with self-imposed limitations. Again, so we have pure limitless consciousness, and then somehow it appears as the ego, the mind, the jiva, which is somehow is contaminated with something that affects its discrimination, producing a self-imposed limitation. And this is the ego, this is the mind. Is somehow, it is the self, following the logic as presented here, because it is the same space, the fabric of Prakriti, of Maya, producing. And then it does not recognize its true nature as limitless Prakriti of Maya, limitless self-consciousness, since we have resolved Maya or Prakriti into consciousness, because they are indistinguishable. They become distinguishable when the ego comes, the mind, which has grown this tumor, and then this tumor has affected its discernment and discrimination. And then this mind is going to establish its identity in the body, in the mind, never in space or consciousness, due to this contamination. This contamination is somehow avidya, ignorance that we carry from one birth to another birth, which is impurity, many times present as impurities, mental impurities, which is often associated with excess of tamoguna or rajoguna. So, and then it's going to produce the mind under the spell of too much tamoguna and rajoguna is going to be, it's going to have its discrimination faculty compromised, and then it's going to experience self-imposed limitations. That's the nature of the mind, the ego. And as it seems, this process of purification is something that goes on from many births. The individual soul trying to decontaminate from avidya, ignorance, which is the very fabric of this manifestation. The manifestation is due to ignorance, because the Jivatmas, as a overall phenomenon, they want what they want, and then wanting something is an expression of ignorance, as we know. And then the universe is projected from ignorance, and it somehow reinforces the ignorance, and the Jivatma is there, exhausting some ignorance, some avidya, and contracting more avidya, trying to get knowledge here and there to resolve this human problem, until we come to the scriptures of the Upanishads and say, so you have to purify your mind, your discriminating faculty, until you can grow to understand your nature, which is limitless, and which is not the mind, but it is Satchitananda. No? So all this ignorance is self-imposed. It's self-imposed, but we need to also remember the structure here, the game here is so tough. Yeah, we should never, blame ourselves for this cosmic video, because it's very tough to shift your identity from the limited body-mind to consciousness. It's a long process. And then once we understand it intellectually, yet we need to develop certainty, which goes beyond intellectual self-knowledge either. Faculty for discrimination is consistent with self-imposed impurities, mind limitation. Thus, the transition from the absolute space, which is the macrocosmic Maya, to the individual space. Okay, so we have this big space, the universe there, the Prakriti of Maya, whatsoever analogy, there is nothing there with the potential for everything. That is this transition state. It's just a little period of time. Maya is tired, he's having a nap. We call it pralaya. People say that can go for millions or billions of years. I don't know. I don't mind, it's irrelevant. But this transition is the transition from the absolute and the manifest universe in which the individual selves, the individual consciousness, the individual space emerge. This is the transition from the absolute to the individual space. Space is the first veil cast off. What it means? Space, the macro space, is the first veil cast off. And so it's the first impurity or modification in consciousness, more or less on those lines. The first power of Maya is to produce space, because the moment that there is the space as the macrocosmic, the universe is already under the spell of Maya. It's under the spell of Maya. It's not fully manifest, but it's in there. So therefore, it's the first veil cast off, or the other word that they used before, is the first modification. The clear, concentrate self becomes purer, tenuous. So acceptable space in which hard, dense crowd or slender things are conceived. This is the second stage from space, from the macrocosmic causal condition of the manifestation of the universe. So the self is there, Maya is there, ready to play its magic. The clear, concentrated self becomes pure. Why it becomes pure? It is pure. Oh no, he means pure space, the pure macrocosmic causal body. So the self, let's say, the self, which is nothing that can be defined, appears as the seed of the universe. And then he says the pure seed of the universe, which is a space in which the dense, crowded universe are conceived. Or slender things are conceived. Everything is conceived in the space, in Maya. They manifest as the 5 elements of which the body is composed. Well, now we are moving out of the most difficult teachings of Vedanta is around the macrocosm causal Maya, okay, the unmanifest, but yet manifest as potential. So I'm saying that is, but it's not, exists, but does not exist. It's very incomprehensible. to be put into words. But
Yeah,
then,
and
huh?
sorry. I'm saying it doesn't help us now too much when the text uses this English that was used in the 18th century, really. A lot of these terms that, aren't readily available to us, an ornate way of speaking and so forth, is so much less direct than we are used to.
Yeah, thanks God we have Mark. Mark is an Englishman, and the English is a little bit more traditional and old style, huh, Mark?
Well, not this old style, Arlindo. This is a bit too old.
They manifest as the 5 elements. Hey, finally enough. Oh my God, we have crossed the line of Maya. So the 5 elements, they are there. They are pure. Yeah, they are yet to divide and combine to produce the physical universe. No, but it's going to compose the body and the entire body of the universe. So it's already a manifestation. So we got past the 3 energies that first comes, and then the 5 subtle elements. The individual then encases himself in the body like a silkworm in its cocoon. So when the body comes into place, the individual consciousness somehow is bound to it. Encases himself in the body like a silkworm in its cocoon. That very nice picture analogy. Thus, the absolute shines as awareness in the body. So how this chit aspect of Brahman, of Tripura, manifests once the body-mind, the individual self, is bounds its identification to the body. So what happens is that consciousness that could come into a new life, a new birth, and then immediately recognize and say, I am a limitless conscious existence. But no, once it's this individual consciousness encases itself into the physical body like a silkworm in its cocoon, what comes in the mind of this child is I am the body, just as candlelights the covering globe, just as a candle lights the covering globe. Okay, very nice analogy. So we have the lamp, a candle, and then there is something covering the lamp, which is a globe, and the lamp is going to light, to illumine the covering of the globe. Such is the power of Maya, which is not distinguishable from consciousness, but the moment Maya brings about Jiva Atma, the Jiva Atma, which is fundamentally is the space of consciousness pervading the body and illumining the body from within out, is going to likewise lighten the body from within, like candles lightens the body, the covering globe, and immediately it's going to say, I am this body, I am illuminating and vivifying and animating and so on. So it's something that happens with very rare exceptions. I have to hear yet another joke better than the one that I heard in India, that a child was born somewhere there. And then when it came out of the womb, immediately he said, oh, no, not again, not again, not again. Because again, I'm under the spell of Maya, and again, I'm going to define myself as Aham Bodhismi. Eu sou o corpo. Again, I'm going to suffer the limitations inherent to the body. Just as the light of the lamp spreads out through holes made in its covers, so also the light of consciousness extends from within through the sense to the external world. This is so beautiful. It's so beautiful because we say again and again that consciousness illumines the universe, but the universe is illumined by reflect consciousness through the five senses so that the universe can be known. So the universe is illuminating, itself is illuminating the entire universe. And then many things are happening in the forest, unless there is Jivatma there, witnessing, illumining, because it's consciousness. Consciousness illumines everything, but it needs a Jivatma to illumine its environment, to witness phenomenon and know it. And then the most philosophical question, a tree has fallen in the forest, whether nobody lives, has it really fallen or not? No? So it has fallen from the standpoint of Ishvara, but Ishvara is not a knowing, witnessing, experiencing entity. No? And unless the Jiva Atma illumines the phenomenal world, so are you aware that we illumine our day-to-day transactions? Are you aware? We all the time illumine our transactions. How so? It is reflect consciousness. But if you have original consciousness, so you're good to go. You don't need to use or reflect consciousness. So just try. You're going to go into Samadhi and you're going to experience pure void, pure space. You're not going to really illumine your environment. No? Just as the light of a lamp spreads out through the holes made in its cover, also the light of consciousness, you are the light of consciousness. How many times we heard that? You are the light of consciousness. No? More philosophically, you are the light of conscious existence, no? Which is a little bit more difficult for people to understand. But we are the light of consciousness is a common notion. And how so? I mean, I am illuminating my transaction, illuminating my environment. How so? I have 5 channels of sense organs, I have 5 sense, and I have the mind. So the mind is the most important because it's going to integrate all those channels, those holes by which light goes, and the mind is going to integrate and interpret what it contacts. The light of consciousness reflects is going to illumine the phenomenal world and is going to try to interpret as close as possible to what it is, let's say. Not being deluded, not being there all the time, seeing snakes on the ropes again and again, or seeing ropes in snakes. The other way also is valid. Who has fallen off here? Mark. Mark fell in a deep space, deep void of no internet connection. Consciousness being absolute and all pervading like space cannot go out through the senses. Yes. Consciousness, original, limitless, cannot go. But still its light extending as space presents certain phenomena. And this cognition amounts to lifting the veil of darkness to that extent. This is said to be the function of mind. Very nice again. See if Mark comes back. So it begins by saying that consciousness being all pervasive, it does not go anywhere because it's all over. Something that's all over does not go through the 5 senses. It's just pervading everything, So what goes through the 5 senses? That's why the best analogy is more like consciousness is pervading everything. And then whenever it finds a subtle body, it shines as the subtle body with all its functions, which includes the five senses and and the potential to know the phenomenal world. So it goes. What goes? Is the mind that goes through. Is the Jiva Atma that goes through. Is reflect consciousness. Because consciousness is all the time there. So what is going to go through the holes of this body, the sense organs, the sense instruments, is the mind. It's the mind that's going to extend itself to reach the phenomenal world. This cognition amounts to lifting the veil of darkness. Yes, because now I see the world. I can cognize or recognize the world. So the darkness of only Maya, only space without, the unmanifest space without diversities of names, colors, and forms, which is associated to darkness or ignorance, was lifted because now I have the mind. Consciousness being absolute and all-pervading, like space, cannot go through the sense. It does not go anywhere because it is there. Yeah? But there is a certain phenomenon. It does not go. But this consciousness produces or presents a certain phenomenon. This phenomenon is the Jiva Atma's reflected consciousness. This reflect consciousness is what is going to travel through the five senses and be there, experiencing the cognizable universe of objects. So this phenomenon of cognition of the phenomenon of the physical universe amounts to lifting the veil of darkness of the deep sleep or the pralaya state. This is said to be the function of the mind. You see, now the mind appears describing what I was interpreting to be the case. This is the function of the mind. Consciousness is not going to travel through the five senses. It's reflected consciousness that does so. It is reflected consciousness that keeps the body alive, the physical body alive, with all its functions on the prana levels and all other mental, emotional, intellectual levels. And then there is another note here. The rays of light are imperceptible in space, but when they impinge on matter, the objects become. The rays of light are imperceptible in space, but when they impinge on matter, the objects become visible by the reflection of the light rays on the surface. Mark came back from the void. The rays of light are imperceptible in space. Have you heard, I mean, one time, not long ago, I heard that when you go into space, everything is dark. And then the mystery is, but we can even go in the direction of the sun, but still we experience darkness. How strange, no? There were some explanations, physical explanations for the fact. Among those explanations, there was an explanation that the sun is not hot as we imagine, okay? But it produced friction and light and fire in contact with certain level of our atmosphere, you understand? And that would be illuminating its contact with us, something on those lines. I don't remember exactly. But here we can look into the sun. The rays of light is imperceptible when we are out in the space because there is no objects on which it can become visible. It becomes visible by reflecting its light rays on the surface of objects. It's very subtle because we are no, okay, and then I'm going to empty my house, take all the objects out, and then I'm gonna turn on the light. And then the light is not going to appear because there are no objects to reflect. No, there is the ceiling, the floor, the walls. So the rays of light are imperceptible in space, but when they impinge on matter and energies matter as well, the objects become visible by the reflection of its luminous rays on the surface of the object. So now, this is the point. Similarly, consciousness appears to disclose the presence of objects in space by unveiling them from the ignorance surrounding them. So how so? How does consciousness? So consciousness appears to, you see, darkness is, let me go here. Similarly, consciousness appears to disclose the presence of objects in space by unveiling them from ignorance. Ignorance is associated to darkness. And then the objects appear in space, and then it needs what? It needs consciousness to make known the unknown. I mean, Maya is there, it needs to be manifest, and then a manifestation brings about the knower and the known. And the knower is reflect consciousness, which is going to reflect on the objects to produce cognition of the object. So similarly, consciousness appears to disclose the presence of objects in space by unveiling them from ignorance. Because now what you have? Now you have the light of Jivatma's consciousness unveiling ignorance, because this is our knowing function, the chit aspect of original consciousness, which is going to remove the veil of ignorance. So we need the mind, a mind to dispel the ignorance in regards to the power of Maya, or the power of not knowing anything in deep sleep or in pralaya, which is a longer sleep. Yeah. Objects are there but invisible, unrecognizable, until it can be seen, known, and experienced, which means the removal of not knowing, the removal of ignorance surrounding the object. Therefore, I tell you that mind is no other than consciousness. So now it's saying that the mind has such a power, we have no clue, but it's through the power of Maya, the power of the mind, that we know the phenomenal or objective world, and we know the true nature of the self. The mind is no other than chit, aspects of Brahman. It's the mind who is going to unveil the ignorance produced by Maya, superimposed by Maya, as the unmanifest universe. And then the manifest universe appearing as Ishvara Jiva Jagata is very powerful. and it's no other than consciousness. The difference lies in the fact that the mind is restless and the self is always peaceful. Oh, this is very nice. So it reminds me of the other passage of this text in which we are looking at consciousness in its resting, luminous witnessing principle without engaging the object to produce deliberate determinations and things like that. You remember this teaching. So we have two aspects of human consciousness. One is pure consciousness, which is not restless. Yeah? But then the aspect of consciousness that becomes restless, yeah, is what? Is the mind, yeah, moved by ragas and dveshas. Ragas and dveshas are going to make this aspect of the mind to become restless, because it's going to be agitated about getting what it likes and avoiding what it does not like. But there is something within the mind that can be said no other than consciousness, which is this witnessing conscious principle, yeah, that is there as pure luminosity. The moment that when an object appears, immediately there is a certain restlessness in the mind. This restlessness of the mind can be offset by self-knowledge, although the mind is going to modify in the presence of objects according to one's tendencies, likes and dislikes, or vasanas. But it is largely neutralized or minimized by the understanding that my true nature is, as a phenomenal reflect consciousness, is pure witnessing consciousness, which is no other than consciousness. Huh? This is another way to understand our nature as limitless, unchanging consciousness from an experiential angle, in which every moment I'm experiencing a peaceful mind and a restless mind. A peaceful mind would be the aspect of my reflect consciousness that just illumines my environment. And then the moment that I engage the world of objects, I'm going to experience a certain restlessness that can be more or less evident according to one's wisdom in respect to the true nature of reality. Otherwise, the mind should be peaceful. Nothing, self-realization is nothing but wanting, the desire to have a peaceful mind, not affected by the circumstance of the world of objects that are never going to match our preference or likes and dislikes. The mind has this aspect which is no other than consciousness. So the mind is no different from the self. The only difference is that the mind, which is reflect consciousness, tends to become restless, whereas the self is always at peace. So now I know that the self is not an experiencing entity, and then it does not help me much to know that the self is always peaceful, because the self is not an experiencing, knowing entity. So I want the mind to be peaceful, isn't it, Lynn? We want the benefit of self-knowledge for the Jiva-Atma, not Paramatma. So the mind is restless, but it gains shanti, peace, and rests once it has understood its nature in Brahman as limitless, unchanging Brahman. And then the Jiva-Atma is going to experience a peaceful mind, which is a benefit of knowing that my true nature is absolute peacefulness. the self-consciousness is unchanging and not subject to ragas and dveshas, likes and dislikes. So that is the equanimity that everybody talks about in terms of the benefit of self-knowledge. No? So my mind is resolved by the means of understanding. And now I experience a peaceful, resolved mind, which is insulated against objects of experience that can be very adverse at times, you know. Realization of the self subdues. Oh, he's going to talk about that now. Realization of the self subdues the restless aspect of the mind, which is the dynamic aspect of consciousness. So why it says that the mind, the restless mind, is the dynamic aspect of consciousness? Because it is this restless mind that dynamites the universe, because it is our likes and dislikes, you know, that keeps this game rolling, moving. You know, is the dynamic aspect of consciousness, is the mind with all its likes and dislikes, which is going to put the whole samsara chakra in movement. You know, oh yes, you want more, yeah, pa, okay, pa, here you go. So another burst, and then go there, and then try to figure out what you want and get what you want, to see if all this dynamic interaction with the apparent field of apparent objects is going to bring peace to the mind. You know? This is the dynamic aspect of consciousness produced by avidya, this fundamental ignorance contained in the prakriti of Maya that manifests as Jiva-Atmas moved by this fundamental ignorance. I need what I need because the objects are real and they are here to complete myself. Realization of the self subdues the restless mind, which is the dynamic aspect of consciousness. On this subdued, there gleams out the peace-filled, perfect intelligence, bliss, which is synonymous of self-knowledge, emancipation, or moksha. So it's the only remedy for the restless mind is self-realization, realizing that I don't move. My likes and dislikes are going to produce restlessness in the mind, but gradually through the complete understanding of the trick of Maya, which deludes myself to identify with the body-mind, I can reverse that, and then I can rest in the, not the dynamic aspect of the mind, always moved by passion for what I want and what I don't want, but I just rest in the illuminating aspect of this consciousness, because my mind was properly pacified due to this assimilation of self-knowledge. There gleams out the peace-filled, perfect, beyond understanding. This intelligence conscious manifests as bliss, which is synonymous with emancipation. Be assured of this, Parasurama. Do not think that an interlude of blankness or veil of nescience will supervene after the cessation of thoughts. No, be assured of your true nature. Don't believe that those states of void or blankness or veil of ignorance here and there will supervene after the cessation of thoughts, for there is no such factor as a blankness or veil of ignorance. It's simply a figment of mind's, Jiva-Atma's imagination. Yeah? So that reminds me of some of my previous gurus before Vedanta. Yeah. So there is no bondage, there is no liberation. Yeah. There is no veil of ignorance. This is all imagination. So see things for what they are. Understand who and what you are. And that is going to do the job of neutralizing the restless mind. Restless due to self-ignorance. Okay, so let's meet again this coming Thursday from this verse 1 to 1. And anything from you guys? Everything good, Philip? Everything good, Mark?
Everything very good, thank you. It's kind of fun going through these cryptic verses, unfolding them.
It's a kind of what?
Fun.
Fun.
It's nice, nice for the mind. It's
I
good.
enjoy it. It's a good mental, intellectual exercise to interpret this verse, you know. It is good to the mind. We are never,
Thank you, Linda.
we are never going to suffer Alzheimer or dementia or anything like that. We stimulate our mind with the text of the Upanishad. And for you, Philippe, English, is it being comprehensible? Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste. Thank you, my dear friends. Oh, by the way, I would like to propose our next class on Friday. Is that possible? Yeah, okay. I'm going to confirm, okay? Thursday or Friday, but possibly Friday, okay? Namaste.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.